Good afternoon. Today is March 22nd, 2019. I am Barton Morris. This is Travis Copenhaver. We are the lawyers, two of the lawyers at the Cannabis Legal Group, and this is Cannabusiness live on Facebook. We do this every Friday from our offices here in Royal Oak, and we are going to discuss every week different issues that are coming up in our cannabis industry. And today I think we have a fascinating topic that we're going to discuss, which is investing in the cannabis industry, not just here in Michigan, but opportunities all over the country and really all over the world and internationally. We have a special guest that's going to join us via Skype or via remote. He's in Las Vegas. His name is Erik Allison. He's the managing partner of Skytree Capital Partners. His managing partner. He is an expert in the cannabis investing industry, and he's going to provide us with some fascinating information and tips for everybody to listen to. So let's start though with some news. There has been quite a bit of news recently, and I guess we'll go to Travis about the news.
Great. All right, well, to start, we had a very active marijuana licensing board meeting yesterday. The board had a very full agenda. Several of the applicants were very successful, lots of new pre-qualified businesses, lots of new resolutions and things. So just to summarize those, Laura's given us some numbers on pending applications. The state of Michigan has received 1,128 applications so far. In pre-qualification, there's been about 385 approved pre-qualified businesses. Breaking it down with different license types, there's been approximately 148 approved fully licensed businesses through Laura so far. So congratulations to everyone going through that process. At the beginning of the meeting though, something very relevant to current patients and consumers, the board passed a resolution that allowed provisioning centers to continue receiving product from caregivers. Through March 1st, provisioning centers can continue to receive product from caregivers. There's a process for what the provisioning centers need to do. Patients need to sign waivers effectively in order to purchase those products. But what the resolution is doing is on April 1st and then moving forward without a deadline at this time, instead of caregivers providing products directly to provisioning centers, instead caregivers will be able to provide products to processors and grower licensed businesses. Those growers or processors will need to input those products into the metric system and then test those products just like any other products they're working with. But there's no deadline on that for now. So while the rest of the licenses are coming through the approval process with Laura, there is a means for those businesses past March 31st to continue providing products to patients. Those are kind of the big news out of the licensing board yesterday. There's some other very important news pending. There is currently a bill in the House of Representatives at the federal level right now called the Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act, or the SAFE Banking Act. That bill has over 130 co-sponsors. More than a quarter of the House is co-sponsoring that bill. It's one of the single most supported standalone cannabis bills ever to go through the Congress process at federal law. It's going into committee for comment next week, and it's one of the most exciting pieces of legislation I think that we've seen to date so far at federal level. Basically what the SAFE banking law is going to do is it's going to create protections for financial institutions to provide banking services directly to state legal cannabis businesses. So it's exciting to see where that's going to go. I think that it's going to be good for all sectors of the market, and we're very excited to see how that goes. We'll learn a lot more into next week when it goes through committee. It's expected to make the House floor promptly and march its way through the Senate as well. So we'll be watching that. That's it for the news.
Yeah, the SAFE Banking Act is definitely the most promising piece of federal legislation or bills that have been introduced. I was talking to the executive director of the National Cannabis Industry Association last night, and he I mean, these guys have been working on this particular bill for years. This is not something that just came up. This has been something that's been in the works for probably 7 or 8 years that the Cannabis Industry Association has been working on. And the fact that we're having a hearing about it in the Finance and Banking Department of the House next Tuesday means it's likely going to get to the floor, and it's already got a third already of the votes necessary for it to pass through just its co-sponsors. So it is definitely a very, very promising development and very welcome news, especially in light of some banking reform that Michigan had recently, right?
Yeah, so as of yesterday, we have amended the Marijuana Tracking Act. It went into effect. Basically what license holding businesses through LARA can do now, so any medical marijuana facility that's received its final license, if it chooses to do so, can indicate to LARA that it would like to provide metric data directly to a financial institution. Basically what that law allows financial institutions to do is verify the deposits, verify the account transactions that business is engaging in, so that bank can verify that it's legally allowed to provide banking services to the business. It's going to be very synergetic with the Safe Banking Act if it goes through, and it's going to only continue to help streamline banking services to Michigan businesses. I think if you ask most cannabis industry professionals, one of the biggest challenges and one of the most important things to really foster this industry's growth is access to banking. Commendable that our state's already done what it can at its level to work with financial institutions to allow banking services to MMFLA businesses. And the Safe Banking Act is really going to take that to the next level. So it's exciting to see these developments going through.
And that's a great segue to an introduction to what we're going to talk about today, because we're also talking about financial services and investing in the cannabis industry. It's definitely one of the most hottest topics that we deal with and that we hear about. Investment opportunities. We obviously represent a lot of people that have engaged in investment opportunities, and these people and a lot of others are looking for more opportunities. And there are a lot of opportunities. The question is, is it too late to get in? When's a good time to get in? And what types of opportunities there are, and what needs to be done in order to make smart decisions. And so in order to talk about these particular issues and answer those questions, we have a great guest. His name is Erik Allison. He is the managing partner at Skytree Capital Partners, that's a private equity firm that specializes in marijuana-related investments. He's a certified investment advisor and has been working in this space for quite a long time. He is calling in right now from Las Vegas, Nevada, and thank you very much for being here with us today. Erik, how are you?
Hey, thank you, Barton. I'm doing great. How about you guys?
We are fantastic. Happy Friday to you. And I know Erik. I've known Erik for many years. I've known that he's been in this space for quite a long time. He's definitely an expert in it. And so let's talk about like what you think about as far as like the timing in our industry, like the cannabis industry, both of course marijuana, but now a lot of people are talking about industrial hemp as well. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, a lot of people ask when is a good time to invest, and the answer is now. We've been investing in the space for about 5 years now. And when we started, it was probably a little early, but it was right when the industry started to become a traditional, legitimate business because of licenses. So, it's not too late to invest. There's tons of opportunities, and I think when you look at what's going forward, as an industry, we're going to continue to see major catalysts that are going to continue to drive growth for the space. So it's not too late to get in now. There's plenty of opportunity, and it's certainly an industry that you're looking at right now for your portfolio.
I get that a lot as far as people saying, is it too late? Have we missed it? And certainly it's developing in every state in its own timeline, right? I mean, Michigan, we're just now beginning to really get started, and I think that it's definitely not too late. There's plenty of opportunities, and I think that's going to maintain and to continue to happen over the next several years, because as we're going to discuss, it's not just about being able to invest your money in like cultivation or like in a dispensary. There's literally just dozens and dozens of ways to invest. So let's talk about where to invest. Like, as far as like globally, what's your opinion as to the best opportunities for the market in this country or in the world?
Yeah, so there's, I'd categorize it as three places to invest. Domestically in the United States. Obviously, Canada has been the leader in the investment space because they were one of the first to legalize both medicinal and recreational on a federal level. And now internationally is also a very attractive space to invest. You've got countries like Mexico and different countries in Europe and internationally that are starting to legalize both medicinal and recreational. So the bottom line here, investment opportunities span the entire globe, which is pretty exciting.
Erik, when you're investing in these businesses, is it a pretty significantly different process depending on the type of company you're investing in? I know like in Canada, there's this concept of like reverse mortgages. I'm sure in different states, it presents different investment mechanisms. What's kind of some of the most common investment processes you typically engage in?
Yeah, so I think there's probably about three different ways that people typically gain exposure to the industry. The easiest one for traditional retail investors at this point is looking to the public markets, right? So you've got companies that are public in Canada, you've got companies that are also public here in the United States, and so anybody with a brokerage account or an IRA account that they manage for Schwab or Fidelity or TD Ameritrade, you can typically find those securities that you can buy in those types of accounts. So public companies are very easy to get exposure to through a brokerage account. Next down below that is private company investing. Typically, private company investing is something that you look at. If you're looking to obtain a license, you're typically investing into an LLC or a partnership, and so there's a lot of opportunities there in multiple states. Sometimes, though, that requires a higher threshold of capital, and a lot of times it bumps into an accredited investor status. So from that perspective, if someone who's made $200,000 a year for the last 2 years as an individual, or $300,000 a year for the last 2 years as joint married filing. So the other qualification is someone with $1 million in investable assets without including your primary residence. So you've got public companies, you've got private company investing. And then if you don't want to do any of those direct investments where you're having to choose specific targets, a good way to diversify, which is how we invest, is to look at venture capital and private equity firms. Those are typically groups that are going to go out and identify multiple different companies. They're going to perform due diligence, and then from an investor perspective, by investing in venture capital and private equity firms, you traditionally are going to get more of a diversified portfolio.
Yeah, so you said a lot of interesting things there. First of all, we talked about accredited investors, and I think a lot of people have a desire to understand that. But you talked about it. It was like the income levels that you can that you've established, but also the amount of money perhaps that you have in the bank, right? That's the definition basically of an accredited investor.
Yeah.
Having about $1 million of equity, I would imagine that's probably in any type of like real estate or stocks or like or cash, right? Or having more than $200,000 a year in income.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. So and that provides the people with the opportunity to perhaps get into private equity firms like your firm, right? You have to be an accredited investor.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we're only allowed to accept accredited and qualified investors.
And then you talked about publicly trading corporations in Canada. So I think a lot of people are interested in that as well. I know that there's not a lot of marijuana companies that are publicly traded here in our United States, but there's several in Canada. I know that Acreage Holdings. You familiar with Acreage? There's been news recently about their acquisition of a lot of different properties here in Michigan, and so they're making a move in Michigan. And if somebody wanted to invest in them, for example, I'm not saying that's a good investment or not. I'm just saying this as an example. They can go to their broker and invest in that Canadian stock exchange, right?
Yeah, so Acreage Holdings is similar to many of the other, they call MSOs or multi-state operators. So what we've been seeing is U.S. companies such as GTI, MedMen, Acreage Holdings, most recently Harvest made a big splash because they just announced the acquisition of a large company for about $850 million. So what's been happening is these companies it's a land grab right now. So they're acquiring licenses and businesses in multiple different states, trying to expand their footprint. And I think a lot of that's in anticipation of federal legalization of some form or fashion in the United States. And they want to be ready to be able to capture and to have retail locations and cultivation and extraction facilities in multiple different states so that when things do loosen up, they're going to be able to start passing cannabis and product through state lines once it becomes federally legal. So I think companies like Acreage are looking to expand their footprint into attractive markets like Michigan. So those are ways that you can get exposure to, let's say specifically the Michigan market. You could buy a stock in Acreage Holdings or a stock in another public company that has acquisition targets or has acquired companies in those different states, including Michigan.
Gotcha. Speaking of becoming more and more federally legal, obviously with the 2018 Farm Bill, hemp, becoming something that will soon be federally legal from the top down. What are some of the other markets in the United States specifically that we're starting to see people gearing up for? I mean, there's a lot of different ways to diversify your investment. Because obviously in Canada they have completely Canadian federally legal businesses. But I know there's a lot of growing hemp and CBD companies starting to pop up in the United States. Is there any sort of investment kind of activity surrounding those types of businesses, or are people still waiting on federal law to kind of catch up there as well?
So, investing in the cannabis industry, everybody has their own different idea of comfort level on where they want to place their capital dollars. Where a lot of people have been flooding is to the direct plant-touching businesses. And by that we mean cultivators, extractors, distribution companies, as well as retail. So that's what we kind of categorize as direct plant touching. For those who are worried about federal legalization or the federal illegality of that, the next place to look is traditionally ancillary companies. And ancillary companies are typically categorized as anything that doesn't directly touch the plant, but might be providing a mission-critical service or a product to the cannabis industry. So a couple examples of that might be seed-to-sale tracking businesses, different technologies that are out there that help enhance the growing techniques or the track and trace of the industry. I would even say ancillary companies include packaging companies, marketing and branding agencies, accountants, law firms, and even insurance companies. So those are all different ways to invest on the ancillary side of the industry while also participating in the uplift. So you've got direct plant touching, you've got ancillary companies, and then a lot of folks are also looking to invest in the industry from a real estate perspective. So if you're not comfortable with the legality of direct plant and you don't really understand operating businesses on the ancillary side, there's a lot of people that like real estate for obvious reasons. So real estate's a great place to place dollars in the cannabis space. A lot of times you're able to lock down long lease terms with attractive cap rates. So that's a place that a lot of investors, including a lot of institutional investors, are looking at entering the market at this point. And then I think the last thing to mention that a lot of people are starting to pay attention to, because of the passage of the Farm Bill last year, is really the hemp. And so from a hemp perspective, you could invest in the real estate, the farms, a lot of the things and the equipment that are used for taking the biomass from growing in the farms and turning it into distillate or isolate, which is typically what a lot of these companies are now using as product ingredients for manufacturing different products for consumers.
There is going to be a market for industrial hemp here in Michigan soon. We're waiting for our Department of Agriculture to create the rules and regulations necessary for them to begin to license those to begin to create those businesses and to begin to grow and process hemp. And my only comment about that was that people think it's too early perhaps to invest in that, but I'd say no. people that are interested in doing that, they're getting their ducks in the row now in order to create the infrastructure necessary to be able to get into that market. They're looking for the property necessary to be able to grow industrial hemp, and they're looking for cities that are going to be friendly, probably a lot more agricultural communities than industrial ones. So there are definitely opportunities that I would suggest that that people look into here in Michigan, but of course all over the country. I think that one of the most important things that people need to understand, though, is what we're going to talk about next, is how to de-risk or how to evaluate these investment opportunities and limit the risk exposure. What type of suggestions, Erik, would you provide in order to ensure that we eliminate risk or reduce risk?
Yeah. Well, so that's part of the reason we started our firm, is because investors want to get exposure to the industry, but there's a myriad of challenges that still exist. And there's a lot of roadblocks, there's a lot of challenges, both regulatory and from a due diligence perspective. So, one of the things that is important for anybody who's looking to invest is make sure that you're consulting or have retained an industry experienced attorney, because there's a lot of things that traditional attorneys, while they're very, very good at what they do, because of the nuances of the industry, it's critical to have someone who's very experienced in state-to-state different laws for the cannabis industry and understands the business. So we always suggest that people consult attorneys like yourselves that know how to navigate those challenges effectively. So that's something that's really important. Another way that people can de-risk their investment is to not do it directly on their own. If they're not comfortable with bringing in all the experts to do that on a direct basis, but to consult with funds and other investors that have a proven track record of effectively investing and deploying capital intelligently into the space. So those are a couple ways. There's also a lot of different consultants out there that are for hire that you can retain, that can evaluate investment decisions, that can take a look at different projects for you, give you the pros and the cons of each, and some of the ways that you might want to look at investing in different opportunities. Another way to approach and de-risk investment is to join investor networks. So one that comes to mind that many people are familiar with is a group called ArcView. They're a fantastic investor network that basically brings like-minded investors together so they can evaluate and look at different opportunities together. They can have discussions about ways that they look at this particular company and what the risk factors might be. And investing with others is always a great way to reduce your risk as well. They call that co-investing. So I think another way to de-risk your investment is to make sure that you're co-investing with other experienced investors. So if you don't have a lot of experience investing in the cannabis space, just beware. It's not the best idea to jump in it by yourself. Make sure you're working with other folks that have experience, because again, there are a lot of challenges. But that's what really creates the opportunity, right? If it was easy and there were a lot of ways for people to invest without having to do a bunch of due diligence and be an expert in the space, it wouldn't be the opportunity that we have in front of us. So those are some things that we think are important when evaluating investments and how to de-risk that investment process.
So previously you had mentioned you got to do your due diligence. Due diligence is obviously very crucial to what Barton and I do a lot of, which is helping businesses look at application projects, put themselves in positions to be successful in obtaining licensure. What kind of due diligence do you focus on when you're looking at potential investments and navigating different options and things like that?
Yeah. Well, due diligence is absolutely critical, as it is in any investment, but in the cannabis space, even more so. Do your research. I think it comes back to also having a great experienced law firm that knows how to evaluate things, but it starts from everything from entity structure. Obviously, you want to take a look at verifying that there are licenses that are valid in state and municipalities. Along with the entity structure and setup, one of the things that investors need to pay close attention to are reviewing and understanding the operating agreements, shareholder agreements, operating agreements. It's important to understand what rights you have, how decisions are made, things of that nature. So certainly it suggests that people retain counsel to review documents, and that's going to extend all the way into the subscription documents. There's some pretty complicated structures out there, especially when you're talking about businesses that have multiple entities underneath a holdco or underneath a corporation. So there's a lot of minutiae that you have to wade through and understand how those entities work, where the profits flow to, and make sure that if you own a piece of that business, is it from the top level or is it from a subsidiary of that business? So, in addition to that, trust but verify. There's a lot of folks out there that can tell an amazing story about an incredible opportunity, but it's very important to verify. So we'd like to look at the strength of the executive management team, what's their experience and track record, from a qualitative perspective, how long have they been together? A lot of times you've got a bunch of management teams that are quickly put together because how quickly the industry is growing, and the teams sometimes have not really had a chance to understand and see how they're going to work together, especially through the good times and the bad. So understanding executive management teams and who's making decisions is very important. For us, if companies are raising capital, we also want to talk about understanding where that capital is going. What are they using it for, and cash burn timelines as well.
I couldn't agree more. What you're talking about as far as like verifying the executive management team, for instance, like we get all types of people that want to invest, and as long as they are investing in a marijuana company, they think that it's like guaranteed money. And you really have to look at the team that's actually taking that money and understanding what they're going to do with it, and what's their background, and what's their level of expertise in this industry. Because a lot of people, like I said, they just think that if it's a marijuana company, that it's going to be successful, and that could not be farthest from the truth. We love to see people that have licenses in other states, that have been successful in other states, and that have a plan, and that are properly capitalized. If somebody is going to put their money into a business that is not properly capitalized, they're literally just flushing it down the drain with the rest of the inadequate capitalization that a company may have. So that's, I think, probably one of the biggest things. I think a lot of people will just jump into anything, and the due diligence is really necessary, and looking into that executive management team is critical. But also verifying, just like you said, verifying that the statements that people are making when they're trying to take those investment dollars, they're accurate. People like to say, listen, this business we're going to grow a bunch of marijuana and it's going to sell just because we're growing marijuana. And then the reality is in a couple years or even shorter than that, there's going to be an oversupply of marijuana in this industry and in this market. We've seen that in other states, and thankfully we can go and look at other states and see the market trends and see the history that those markets have undergone, and be able to try to predict what may happen here. All these things have to be taken into consideration when, depending upon the type of investment and the type of company that somebody's looking into investing in. And then the other thing is operating agreements. As you said, operating agreements are significantly important, and the details could be vastly different between one company and another. Somebody has to look at their voting rights as opposed to their management rights, their right to eliminate themselves from it, or their right to gain more shares or more equity into a company, the distribution rights. There's really a lot of individual considerations that are going to be illustrated in an operating agreement. And that being said, we got to make sure that you have an operating agreement. There's a lot of people that are operating a company without any type of formal contractual obligation in order to run this company. We call it corporate governance. And quite frankly, there's a lot of people that don't have a formal structure. And if you're investing in a company that doesn't tell you and doesn't delineate those rights and obligations and the manner of which that investment is going to be held, then that's a very bad scenario that we can't stress most. And we do that a lot. We draft a lot of operating agreements. Mm-hmm. We take into consideration our clients' very specific requirements. We ask the right questions. We want to know what happens upon certain circumstances. That's our responsibility, is to look out for all, or try to forecast all circumstances that may come up, so that we can draft it in the operating agreement so that it's very clear understanding amongst the parties.
Erik, when you're representing or acting as an investor, are there types of things you like to see, like in an operating agreement or a subscription agreement, things that make you feel more confident investing, especially from like a minority position? Or are there, is it kind of more context-based depending on what the project is? I don't know if there's any like red flags or things that stick out to you.
Yeah, so every deal is different. But from that kind of perspective, Barton mentioned a couple of things that when we're reviewing operating agreements and subscription documents, I think the biggest thing is people, or an important thing that people need to understand is obviously distribution, understanding when and how they plan on getting capital back. Because we don't just make investments for a company to have our capital dollars for forever, right? We're interested in at least making a return. So you need to understand how that money's coming back to you. I think another thing that's really important is understand what does the cap table look like, right? So who are the other investors involved? How much dilution might be coming down the road, and this is something that we typically look at in companies that are prior to going public or are public. We want to understand what's the fully diluted and outstanding shares of the company. Are they going to have to go out and raise more money, which is going to further dilute shareholders? Those are all really important things, but when we're leading investment rounds, part of the way that we enhance our returns for our investors is that we're in a position where we work with the company, but we focus on things like corporate governance. Where it makes sense, we'll take a board seat. We understand and discuss things like liquidation preferences. How are we getting our money back out, and at what rate are we getting it back? So those are things that we take a very, very close look at, amongst a myriad of other things. We can talk all day about the different things to pay attention to, but cap table is very important. Distribution rights, voting rights are very important. Who's got the control to make decisions? And what kind of transparency as an investor are you going to get, including access to financials and contracts and other things like that. So, going back on due diligence too, some things that we ask also is, what kind of insurance does the company have? Do they have crop coverage? Do they have product liability? Do they have property coverage? So those are important things that if there's a big crop failure to something that might be included in an insurance policy, it could save the investors and the businesses millions of dollars. So we always want to find out who the insurance is provided by. And also we ask questions about who is your legal counsel and who is your CPA or accounting firm. Because as important as understanding and vetting the management team, it's also important to understand who's giving them, advice on the accounting and the legal side. And again, there's a lot of law firms out there that, unlike yours, that don't have experience in cannabis. So if a company's got a law firm as their counsel that doesn't have experience in cannabis, that would make me nervous. I'd rather have them have a law firm that is intimately involved in the space, because they're going to know the nuances. So those are some things that are important. And then also understanding the access to banking that the business has. Because if they can't bank their business and you're an investor, you certainly don't want to look at having a distribution or return of capital in the form of millions of dollars in cash. That's a difficult thing for anybody to deal with a banking relationship. So again, I think the point is there are a myriad of issues that that can be overcome and can be worked through, but you need to make sure you're relying on the professionals that can help you understand what the issues are and how to drill down and to find out, okay, can we handle this? Can we deal with this issue? And how do we move past it?
I couldn't agree more. In fact, that's something that we do here, is that we assist those with that are looking to invest their money with evaluating those opportunities. They have to be evaluated, so we're not going to continue to talk about that. In fact, we could probably wrap things up, except I'd like to hear what your thoughts are with respect to what the future holds for cannabis and like hemp investment opportunities.
Well, we're really excited about what the future holds. Things change rapidly in the space, and I think what people can expect to see is there's going to continue to be more investment dollars flowing into the space. I think there's going to continue to be more opportunities for entrepreneurs, for people that want to build a business, which is always great. There's going to be more companies look to public markets to get liquidity and to get capital dollars so they can fund expansion and growth of the businesses. I think you're going to start to see, and we've already seen a little bit, but you're going to see more involvement from big industries such as alcohol, CPG companies, which is consumer packaged goods. They're looking to the cannabis industry to diversify their product offerings as well. So you're going to see more CPG and traditional beverage companies come into the space. I think at some point we're looking at the beginning of medicinal federal legalization. There's a bill right now that is really interesting that is regulate marijuana like alcohol. So I think some of those are going to be coming down the pipeline along with some banking reform. So those are all going to be really interesting, but I think you're going to continue to see more countries legalize, more countries enact decriminalization, and I think the bottom line is it's just going to be more, which is great for the industry, it's great for investors, and it's great for entrepreneurs. So I'm really excited about what's going on in the industry, and I think for the next decade plus, there's going to remain to be a lot of opportunity.
Thank you, Eric. And before we leave, you want to tell us anything more about Skytree Capital?
Yeah, I think Skytree Capital, we've already launched and closed our first fund. We just launched fund number 2. We have a unique ecosystem that helps our investors really understand how we make investment decisions. And we just launched fund number 2. We're raising capital. We've got a great pipeline of businesses, and we're really excited about what the future holds, and we're looking to be a part of it. And we're fortunate to be part of this amazing emerging opportunity that's presented itself right now.
And you're in Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, we're headquartered in Las Vegas.
Thank you very much for joining us on our show. I think this is something that a lot of people are going to be interested in. We're definitely going to make it available to everybody on our website. You can find our show on our YouTube channel, where all of our prior shows are housed as well, and of course on Facebook. All right, so that's going to be it for today's show. We'll be back here next week, next Friday at 2 o'clock, and we will dive deep into another great subject. And so for Travis Copenhaver and Barton Morris, we'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in.
See you guys.
Thanks, everybody.